Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going deep into a topic that's super interesting, at least to me. We're going to be looking at how our brains and bodies change, throughout young adulthood.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating, I think.
I think so too. So think of this like, I don't know, a cheat sheet to understanding not only yourself, but also the people around you, especially during those younger years.
We're basically going to break down, decode the science behind those moments that make you just scratch your head,
Yeah.
Those bursts of brilliance.
Exactly.
And everything in between that we often see in young people.
Yeah. Because it can really feel like they're speaking a totally different language sometimes, can it?
It really can.
And so let's just jump right into it. Let's start with probably the age group that has us all scratching our heads the most, at least in my experience. Those roller coaster years, 12 to 14.
Oh, yeah.
Puberty hits. Those hormones are surging. And suddenly, every little thing feels like a life or death situation.
Right. And it's not just drama for drama's sake. There's a real neurological reason for this.
Yeah.
Imagine a car with a souped-up engine and weak brakes. That's pretty much the 12 to 14-year-old brain. That limbic system, the part of the brain that processes emotions, it's going 100 miles an hour thanks to all those hormones. But the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic and impulse control,
Right.
it's still very much under construction.
So that explains why even a neutral comment, just a simple comment from a parent or a teacher could send me spiraling into a full-blown meltdown back in the day. I remember feeling like everyone was out to get me.
It's so relatable. And it gets even more interesting. Research actually shows that during this time, adolescents, they're more likely to misinterpret neutral facial expressions as negative.
Wow.
So a teacher that's just looking thoughtful might be seen as disapproving.
Interesting. Wow. That's mind-blowing.
And this, of course, can lead to all sorts of misunderstandings.
It makes you rethink how we talk to teenagers, for sure. So knowing this, how can we as parents or educators or just, caring adults, how can we navigate this crazy intense phase?
The first thing is to remember that their feelings, while they might seem really overblown to us,
Yeah.
they're real to them. And so instead of dismissing them, try validating those feelings.
Okay.
Something as simple as, hey, I see that you're really upset right now, can go a long way. It can help them feel heard.
Yeah, it's like acknowledging the storm without getting swept away by it. Right?
Exactly. And then, because those emotional regulation skills are still developing, this is a great time to start introducing some healthy coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Teach them how to do some deep breathing techniques,
Right.
some mindfulness exercises, or even just give them a space to journal their feelings.
That's great advice.
Just equip them with tools to manage those really big emotions that they're experiencing.
I like that. We can't forget about their desire for independence that starts to kick in around this time, too.
Absolutely. And while it's still important to, of course, set clear boundaries, give them little choices whenever possible, just to foster that sense of autonomy. Letting them pick out their own clothes, have a say in, I don't know, what movie you're watching as a family, or even choose what's for dinner one night a week, it can go a long way.
It's a tough balance, isn't it?
It really is.
It's that balance between guidance and freedom.
It is. You want to give them enough space to explore their individuality, but still provide that safe, supportive environment that they need.
So true. Okay, so we've talked about, the craziness of those early teen years, but what happens as those teenagers get a little older? 15 to 18. Do those emotional storms start to calm down at all?
They do, but, it's not always smooth sailing.
Right.
That prefrontal cortex is maturing. It's giving them a better set of brakes, so to speak.
All right.
But they're still figuring out how to really use them effectively.
Sure.
Think of it like learning how to drive stick shift.
Yeah.
There might be a few jerky starts, some stalls along the way.
For sure.
Yeah.
So they could have this brilliant, insightful thought one minute and then make a completely baffling decision the next.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can see that.
And there's another really fascinating brain process that's happening during this phase. It's called synaptic pruning.
Okay.
So basically what's happening is the brain is getting rid of connections that it's not using anymore just to become more efficient.
So it's kind of like decluttering, like the brain's closet.
I like that. Yeah, exactly. And this, this leads to more focused thinking.
Sure.
But it also explains why teenagers sometimes get stuck in these really rigid thought patterns.
So if they're not good at something right away, they just assume they're bad at it and give up.
That's one way it can show up. And this is where the way that we give them feedback becomes really important. So instead of focusing on the negative, like you didn't study hard enough, try to highlight their effort.
Yeah.
encourage them to, like, reflect on it.
Like, I see you put in a lot of work. What do you think went well? And what might you do differently next time?
That's a good one.
You know?
It's like reframing those mistakes as opportunities for growth, which, let's be honest, we're all still doing that.
Always. We're all learning.
No matter what age.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's not forget another big change that happens during this phase. Their sleep patterns
Oh, yeah.
go through a major shift.
Big time.
Their circadian rhythms naturally shift later, so they want to stay up late. And then, of course, it's harder to wake up early.
Explains all those late-night study sessions.
Exactly.
That somehow turned into social gatherings.
Right. Happens to the best of us.
Oh, for sure.
So, understanding this shift in their biology can help us approach those early morning conflicts
Yeah.
with a little more empathy.
Right, right. So maybe, like, adjusting homework deadlines.
That could work.
Or even just having a conversation with your teenager about finding a sleep schedule that actually works for everyone. Yeah, it's all about trying to understand, where they're coming from, both literally and figuratively.
That's so true. Okay, so we've talked about that early adolescence and then the later teen years. Let's move into the world of emerging adulthood.
It's
Exciting, right?
Yeah.
18 to 21, but also often overwhelming. I mean, there's a lot going on. This is where things get really interesting, so buckle up. So we're in the world of emerging adulthood now. Think college, first jobs, maybe those first real romantic relationships. It's exciting,
It is.
but it's also like really overwhelming, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a period of massive growth and transition, but it comes with, like, this whole new set of pressures and expectations. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
They're expected to, like, suddenly be responsible.
Right.
Make these huge life decisions and, like, somehow have everything figured out, and their
Right.
brains are still developing.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure. It's like being handed the keys to a race car and being told to just go for it, even if you haven't quite figured out all the controls yet.
That is such a good analogy.
Yeah.
So by this age, that prefrontal cortex, the CEO of the brain,
Right.
it's almost fully developed.
Okay.
But those emotional regulation skills,
Yeah.
they might still be lagging a bit behind. So, they might do great in school, at work,
Yeah.
but then struggle with, like, handling stress or navigating, complicated relationships.
So it's not enough to just have like a mature brain. You got to learn how to actually use it in all those messy real life situations.
Exactly. It's like, having the tool,
Yeah.
but not necessarily knowing how to use it yet.
Right.
And, this is where I think some of the research that we looked at offers some really good insights for, those of us who are, like, supporting these emerging adults.
Okay.
So instead of, like, micromanaging every single decision they make,
Right.
which, let's be honest, can be frustrating for everybody involved.
Yeah, for sure.
Try shifting into more of a, like, supportive, almost like a consultant role.
Okay, I like that.
You're there to offer advice when they ask for it.
Right.
But let them make their own choices.
Give them that space.
Yeah. And, yeah, make your own mistakes.
Because mistakes are going to happen, right? I mean, even with a fully developed prefrontal cortex,
Oh, yeah.
I'm still making mistakes
We all are.
all the time.
And that's why it's so important to, like, reframe those mistakes as learning opportunities.
Right.
Instead of that, I told you so, it's like, what did you learn from this? Or how would you approach it differently next time?
It's taking the sting out of failure
Yes.
and turning it into like a stepping stone,
Exactly.
which, let's be honest, we're all still on that path,
Oh, absolutely.
no matter our age.
We're all learning, always. But, we haven't even talked about another big change that happens during this phase.
What's that?
Emotional labor.
Oh, okay. You've mentioned that a few times.
Yeah. Can you break that down a little bit? Like, what does that look like in this stage of life?
Think about it. It's like the energy it takes to, like, keep it together when you're dealing with like a difficult customer at work, even though you're feeling frustrated.
Right.
Or like navigating those family gatherings where you're trying to like be respectful of everyone's opinions, even if you don't agree.
Right.
It's that effort that we put into managing our emotions and like presenting this persona
Right.
to the world.
It's exhausting.
It is.
It can be so draining.
Yeah.
And so imagine, you're doing all that
Yes.
while you're also, like, dealing with the pressure of college or work relationships, trying to figure out who you are.
Yeah. And I think it makes sense that it would feel overwhelming.
Right. So how do we, like, as parents, friends, mentors, how do we actually offer support, genuine support?
Sometimes I think just acknowledging what they're going through can make a world of difference.
Just saying, hey, you're dealing with a lot right now. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. Or, I'm really proud of how you're navigating all of this.
It's acknowledging the struggle
Yes.
without diminishing their efforts.
Absolutely.
Right. It's like, it's okay to not have all the answers
Right.
just yet.
Totally. And I think it's also really important to encourage healthy habits during this time.
Okay.
Even with a fully developed brain, if you're pulling all-nighters and living off of caffeine and junk food,
Yeah, it's going to catch up to you.
it
It
is.
doesn't matter how mature your brain is.
Right. Our bodies still need,
Right.
sleep,
Yeah.
nutritious food, a little bit of movement
It's true.
to function at their best. We're not superhuman,
Right.
even if we try to act like it's.
I know, I do.
Me too.
So, promoting those healthy habits, whether it's, cooking a healthy meal together,
That's a good one.
going for a walk, it can make a difference.
It really can. It's about showing them,
Yeah.
not just telling
Good
them.
one. Exactly. And this is also a time, when these young adults are really, figuring out their values, what matters to them.
It's such an important time for self-discovery.
It is. I'd love to hear from our listeners, actually. What were some of your biggest, aha moments during this transition? What helped you through all the ups and downs? And, what advice would you give to your younger self now, knowing what you know?
Oh, that's a good one.
Right.
Because, we're talking about brain development in general, but everyone's journey is unique.
Okay, so we've gone through the craziness of the teen years and the ups and downs of emerging adulthood. Now let's talk about what happens when we reach, our mid-20s, 24 to 28. Is the brain finally settled down? Ready to go?
Well, in terms of the actual development of the prefrontal cortex, it's reached full maturity now.
Okay.
So, they have the capacity for really good decision-making, emotional regulation, long-term planning, all that.
So that race car is, fine-tuned and ready to go, right?
You would think. But a lot of the research actually shows this can be a really stressful time.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, it really comes down to, those external pressures.
Oh,
Even with a fully developed brain, the pressure of, building a career,
yeah.
maintaining relationships, trying to, achieve
It's
success,
to, prove yourself.
it can lead to overwhelm and burnout.
It's like having that amazing car, but being stuck in rush hour traffic every day.
Yes, exactly.
It doesn't matter how great the car is if you're constantly stressed.
Exactly.
It's going to take its toll.
And this is where that idea of emotional labor, which we were talking about before, I think becomes even more relevant.
Okay.
Because think about it. It takes energy to, maintain that professional demeanor at work, even when you're dealing with, difficult coworkers.
Oh, for sure.
Or demanding clients,
Right.
or, navigate those complicated family dynamics, relationships, all while, trying to project this image of being composed and successful.
Mhm. It really is juggling all these invisible balls.
It is.
And sometimes those balls feel really heavy.
They do. The research really highlights the importance of, recognizing and validating this emotional labor,
Okay.
both in ourselves, but also in the young adults in our lives.
So how can we do that? Practically, how do we do that?
I think sometimes just, acknowledging what they're going through can be huge.
Sure.
Just saying, hey, I see how hard you're working. It's okay to take a break.
Instead of you got this, just power through it.
Yeah, exactly.
More it's okay to not be okay.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, encouraging those healthy habits that we're talking about.
Right. The sleep, the food.
Exactly. It becomes even more crucial during this time.
So even with fully formed brains, we still have to take care of ourselves.
We do.
We're not robots.
We're not.
Yeah.
And, I think this also brings up the importance of, play and downtime. Yeah. As adults, it's so easy to get caught up in, all the shoulds.
The to-do list.
Exactly. We forget to, schedule in time for things we actually enjoy.
Yeah, we're still allowed to have fun.
We are. I would say it's essential.
Right.
And, this actually brings up a good point. Even with a fully developed brain, learning to manage stress and prioritize our well-being,
Mm-hmm.
it's an ongoing process.
It's a lifelong journey.
It is. So think back on your own journey, as you've been listening to us talk about these different stages. What were your biggest challenges? What strategies helped you? And how can you use what you've learned to support the young adults in your life?
It's wild to think about, right? Even when our brains are quote unquote, all grown up,
Yeah,
we're still learning and changing.
we are.
It's not like you just hit a finish line and that's it.
No, it's a journey.
It's a lifelong journey.
It is.
And like we've talked about today, there's going to be twists and turns and all sorts of unexpected things along the way.
Definitely. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from today is that, we've all been through these stages. We all have.
Yeah.
And I think remembering that
Yeah.
can help us be more understanding, more empathetic, especially with the young adults in our lives.
It's like you suddenly have this secret decoder ring for like understanding human behavior, you know?
It is.
When you understand the why behind those behaviors, even the ones that are super frustrating,
Yeah.
it's easier to react with patience.
Yeah, it's like, instead of getting exasperated when your teenager's having a meltdown,
Right.
you can like remind yourself, oh, right, their emotional control panel is still under construction.
It's true.
Or, if you're working with a young adult who's just like super stressed out and they seem lost,
Yeah.
you can like offer support and be encouraging, knowing that, hey, they're still learning how to like do this whole adulting thing.
It's like giving yourself a pep talk almost.
It is.
It's like, okay, remember what it was like. Cut them some slack, offer a helping hand.
Absolutely. And that understanding can also apply to ourselves too, right?
That's a good point.
We can, use this to be more compassionate with ourselves.
Yeah.
With our own inner teenager or our own
Yeah.
emerging adult.
Yeah.
Just remembering that, hey, we're all still works in progress, even with fully developed brains.
We are. I love that.
It's true.
We're all a work in progress.
Always.
It's like giving yourself permission to be human, to make mistakes, to have all those big feelings.
Yes, and to keep learning and growing throughout our whole lives.
I love that. It's so important. And it's important to remember, too, that each person's journey is going to be unique, right? There's not like one size fits all.
No, not at all.
When it comes to brain development or just navigating life.
Exactly.
What works for me might not work for you.
Right. And that's okay.
It's all about meeting people where they are.
Yes.
Right. Offering support that feels genuine and understanding.
Exactly.
Without judgment.
I love that. Yeah. And remember, understanding our brains, it's a lifelong thing. There's always something new to learn.
There is.
And new research is always coming out.
All the time.
So.
Yeah, this has been a great starting point, but it's really just like the tip of the iceberg.
It is.
So keep exploring, keep learning. And I think most importantly, keep talking about it.
Yes.
Right? Talk to the young people in your life.
Talk to each other.
Share your experiences, ask questions.
Yes.
Be open to learning from each other.
Because, at the end of the day, it's all about connection, right?
It is.
Connecting with ourselves, connecting with others, and just embracing this whole crazy journey.
The human experience.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive for today. A huge thank you to our expert for all these incredible insights.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and keep learning.